Hello and welcome to the Epic Photography Podcast, sponsored by our epic sponsor, Platypod, the world's most compact tripod base. So today I am joined with Stephanie Richer and Cathy Weatherston, or Cathy Baitson. Hello, ladies.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
I'm not too bad, thank you. So today we are talking about photography stories and snories. Now, what do we mean when we say snories? Who would like to explain that one?
Well, I suppose I better because I was the one that said it.
Cathy. Hand that to Cathy.
Yeah, so myself and Sian were talking about what stories we were going to do and what we were going to say in podcasts and stuff. And we were saying, we could do things that have happened to us, maybe some funny, maybe some serious, maybe some things that went wrong. So we were like, oh my God, like what happened? And we were just trying to think of stuff, ourselves. And this was in a WhatsApp group or something. We were texting each other. So she was telling me a story about a snake. And so I messaged her back and I went, oh, wow, that's such a great snory. And then I start laughing, right? And she's like, and I said, oh, God, and because I was laughing so much, I was like, I'm really going to have to. So I text her and I just kept laughing in the text and I put it back and I kept laughing. I said, I'll explain in a minute. So anyway, I was saying that snory sounds like a boring story, right? Because obviously it's there if you'd snore if it was boring, So I says, I didn't actually mean that it was a boring story. So then this is where the joke, the snories came from. So
Snories.
Yeah, so that's it. So you're going to have to tell your snake story now because after me
Yes.
saying that, yeah.
I think we lead with the snake story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as they always say, never work with children or animals. Well, I know that we all have basically done that, so we've broken that rule. But very early on in my career, I decided that I really wanted to work with basically an animal handler. So we've got a tarantula and this Burmese python. Now, this is going back sort of 10, 12 years. And to be honest, I didn't really know too much about things like animal welfare. I wasn't really kind of looking into that. It was just one of those things that I kind of thought that would be cool to have that in a photograph. I think I'd seen it in some really like posh designer adverts. I thought, oh yeah, that'd be great. Let's get a snake in. And this model, she said, yeah, I'd be up for it. I'd be keen. So I got the studio. I had a studio in the Midlands and got a full creative team in, had models, makeup, hair, stylist. And then this animal handler comes in with a tarantula and this Burmese python snake. And all of a sudden, everything got real. And we're kind of looking, going, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea now. And so we started with the tarantula. And I thought, well, I can't ask my model to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So put my hand out and put this tarantula on my hand. I'm like, okay, it's not so bad, but okay, you can have it back now. And then on came the Burmese python, and so started to get quite a few good shots, and the model kind of eased into it, and things were going really well. And then kind of halfway through, the model was like, oh, this snake's starting to feel a bit weird. And the animal handler's going, oh, no, it's fine, just keep him there, be fine, everything's fine. And she's like, oh, I don't know, it's like starting to, fidget or just, it didn't feel the same. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this snake just gives out this huge amount of liquid. And we were like, oh my goodness, the snake has just weed in the studio. Like this snake has weed. And when I mean a lot of liquid, there was a lot. I mean, this snake was big, but there was a lot of mess. And the model was obviously mortified. She got some of it on her. And the animal handler came in. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. This never happens. I can't believe this has happened. And, this has never really happened on a shoot before. And so anyway, I was talking to Cathy about it. Hence where the snories came from. And yeah, we were just sort of talking about it and Googled it because I thought all these years later, I've never actually figured out why the snake did that. I mean, I've never owned reptiles, I hadn't really looked into it. And it turns out that it's actually due to stress. So now I feel even worse because obviously I didn't know that back then, that it was a stress response. And it wasn't so much, it wasn't actually wee, it was actually, what was it, Cathy? It's like a hormone
just
or something.
Some sort of scent
Maybe
or whatever.
it
Just
felt
to,
Maybe it realized it wasn't the center of attention. It was just merely a prop.
Maybe. But I tell you what, the smell, it went everywhere in the studio and I couldn't get it out for weeks. It was like the most horrendous smell. And ever since then, I've not worked with animals. I just, no.
Oh, no.
It's definitely a no.
Do you want a story about smell? Okay,
Go on, then.
Let me give you a story about smell. So I get a phone call. Every once in a while, I get a phone call from the communications director of the Diocese of Knoxville, the Catholic Diocese of Knoxville, and he said, "Hey, would you be game to documenting the exhumation of a priest that's been dead for over 135 years?"
Sure.
And I said, yeah, sure, right? I mean,
Okay.
why not, right?
Why not?
So as it turns out, there was this priest that back in the 1800s, Chattanooga, Tennessee, had a terrible yellow fever epidemic, and he was very well loved by his parishioners and by the city leaders, but he stayed. Everybody else left and left these poor people to be sick, and he stayed and he ministered and eventually caught yellow fever and died. Fine. So they bury him, and then 6 years later, they start a Catholic cemetery in Chattanooga. They dig up poor father, put him in a new casket, right? We went from a wooden casket to a cast iron casket, and they put him back in the ground. So now, fast forward to today, what we call a cause, meaning a case for his possible sainthood, has been opened with the Vatican. And they decided, well, if that's the case, we're going to dig up Father again, and we're going to put him in the Basilica in Chattanooga, his remains. So that was why I was part of this team. And it was very detailed, the protocol, like we had to swear an oath that we'd never show any of these pictures, and I had to photograph everything from it. Well, they finally find the coffin. They lift it very carefully out because this thing weighs about 900 pounds. It's cast iron. And over time, unfortunately, it had developed a little crack, which meant water got in.
Oh, no.
Which meant when they opened the casket, there wasn't much of Father left. He was largely skeletonized, but all that water had caused the vestments he was buried in, the inside of the casket, etc., to decay and mold. And the smell, the stench was awful. So, and mind you, by the way, this was last summer. The temperature was about 98 and the humidity at 95%.
Oh, God, that would be worse, wouldn't it? Oh,
No.
this makes it stronger.
God, it was awful. But the problem is that, so we were at this for a couple of days, and in subsequent days, the smell sort of dissipated because things had started airing out. But that first day, the smell was not only bad, but it clung to all our clothes.
Oh, no.
And I remember driving home, smelling it. And I stopped on the way home because I wanted a cup of coffee. And everybody in this, truck stop was, looking at me inching away from me. And what was I going to do? Turn to them and say, "You know what you smell? The smell of death. The stench of the grave." But I didn't. It remains... It remains one of the most interesting gigs I ever did as a photographer. And I was amazed by the medical examiner. She'd have this tiny piece of bone. She'd go, "Oh, yeah, this is the second corpuscle from his left hand." I'd be like, "Yeah, whatever. Click. Okay. Whatever you say."
Can you imagine even saying to people, though, if you actually told them what this smell was, I mean, whether they wouldn't look at you in a better way. They'd be like, "What?"
Exactly.
What did you just do?
And it's like you're smelling it for days, you know what I mean? It's like a scent that just doesn't leave, sure, isn't it? Like when it's so strong like that, it's like it just doesn't leave, you know?
Well, the next day I asked the communications director, I said, "Did you do what I did?" He goes, "What? Go home immediately, strip down naked on my front porch, go in, throw the clothes into the washer."
That'd be a sight for sore eyes.
Shower for 30 minutes.
The neighbours out with the cameras.
That's right. I did the same thing. I must have stayed in the shower a good 45 minutes just scrubbing every part of my body until I convinced myself I couldn't smell it anymore. And my clothes, I went through 2 washings just to make sure that smell didn't stay. It was horrible. But that's my smell story as a photographer.
Well, I don't have a smell. I don't think I have any smell stories now, to be honest with you. God, where would I start? I have so many stories. I'm kind of which ones will I go for? Because I have weddings ones, and I was I leave those for a wedding podcast. But anyway, we'll see. I'll go with one where this is when I worked for one of the newspapers, and I was sent to photograph a meeting, and it was a Fine Gael meeting, and the Taoiseach was there at the time. And, you know,
Explain what the Taoiseach
yeah,
is.
they sent me because I haven't a clue about politics, so I just concentrate in the photographs. I don't worry about what they're talking about. It doesn't bother me, you know. But anyway, so I'm there and I'm looking around and I'm taking photographs of, and, you know, they would introduce people, you know, as they were going along. And I'm still going out there going, Jesus, I have to get the Taoiseach now. Jesus, which one is he, you know? So there was a guy standing to the right of me and I turned around and I nudged him. I says, come here. I says, do you know who the Taoiseach is? And he goes, I do. I says, any chance you point him out to me? I said, because I have to get a photograph of him, but I don't know who he is. He turns around and goes, it's me. And I was like, oh, here now. Oh. And I just looked at him and I went, oh, I didn't recognize you in the red tie. And I don't know why I said that, but I did. I said that, right? And he goes, oh, well, that's a bit strange because I always wear this tie. And I was like, oh.
Oh, no.
And do you know when I actually Googled him then? I think it was on Wikipedia. He did have, I think, a red striped tie on at the time.
Oh.
But I thought the ground would, you know, if it could open it up and swallow me, I was like, just do it now, you know. But he laughed and I laughed. And I says, well, just make sure that I get a photograph of you before I leave here, you know. So,
I guess that's quite a good introduction, though, isn't it? I mean, it definitely broke the ice, even if it was super awkward.
Yeah, you probably changed
And
it.
the Taoiseach is like the Prime Minister, right?
I meant to say that. Yeah, it is. It's like the Prime Minister. The Irish Prime Minister is the Taoiseach, yeah.
Is he the same one who goes around with his dog? He takes his dog everywhere? Doesn't your Taoiseach now like have some Bernese mountain dog he goes around with all the time?
God, I'm not sure about that. I don't know what pets he has now.
Well,
at the moment.
evidently you're not into politics, so.
Well, it's not the same guy, I don't think, anyway. So, you know, I think this was like around 2011, 12 or something like that, you know. I think it was Enda Kenny. But anyway. So, So, Sian, moving on to you now. What's your next one?
Well, I think the next one it's partly to do with weather, but it's not. So obviously the UK is the weather is all over the place, and you know, rain, and then we get like the heat wave, and then with the heat wave we get the hay fever. So I don't know if you both suffer with any hay fever allergies or anything, but so mine is really bad in summer, like really, really bad, and I think going back to I think it's like 2011 or 2012, it was a really, really really hot summer. And I'd got this really cool gig to go and photograph this band in a castle, and it was such a hot day. I just remember thinking, oh, I've got to carry all this stuff. I've got to look professional. You know, it's really, really hot, and I just thought the worst of my problems that day. I thought I'd just be sweating. That's what I thought, and then kind of turned up, started doing pictures, carrying the stuff around. It was all going really, really well until about sort of 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon, and obviously, like the pollen levels had got really, really high. And then I started getting the sniffles and like my eyes started watering and still trying to take some pictures and everything. And probably about half an hour later, my eyes were streaming. Like I literally couldn't see to take the photographs. Like they were just itchy, they were watering. And then probably about 10 minutes later after that, while I'm still trying to take these pictures, I start sneezing. And when I say it was like... It was the worst moment of my life, probably in front of a client, because I just couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop sneezing. It was continuous, and they were looking at me as if to go, "Are you okay? Like, are you, you know, you all right?" I'm like, well, I mean, I might not look okay. I'm kind of okay, but I can't really focus because in between the sneezing and my eyes watering, it's just...
Oh, but there's nothing worse when the eyes water like that and you can't see out.
Right.
Exactly.
My right eye waters every single morning.
Yeah.
And if I have like an early shoot, like I really have to go out an hour beforehand just to let the tears disappear, you know. So go on anyway.
But I actually had to, they actually said to me, like, are you okay to carry on? I was like, I'm not. I couldn't. It got so bad, even though I'd kind of taken some more tablets and everything and eye drops, and I just couldn't carry on the shoot. So, I mean, I think that was probably one of the worst. It was such a great opportunity to do that shoot and everything. And we got some good shots, but it had to be cut short because of bloody hay fever. I mean...
Oh, so you always have the hay fever tablets in the bag just in case, you know.
Yeah, but it was.
So
honestly,
that's a tip now
so
for it.
I know, good tip.
If you got hay fever, put the hay fever tablets in your bag.
Yeah, and maybe
and
just
Google the Taoiseach or the president or whoever you're going to photograph beforehand.
Yeah,
and don't dig up old priests.
Yeah.
No. You know, it's You talk about being in a situation where you're embarrassed, and whatnot. So back in the day when I first started to go professional with my photography, I was interning for a local photographer who did weddings, but he also did things like boudoir shoots. And I would design and I would retouch a lot of his albums. So he asked me to go ahead and design and retouch this boudoir album. That included pictures of her and various things. And it was going to be a gift from her to her groom. Fine. Okay, so topless pictures, nothing too bad, but that was basically it. And I did not help him with that wedding, right? So a few months after the wedding, I see the couple in my local grocery store in the produce section. And I, wanting to be friendly customer relations, I go up to them and go, "Oh, hey!" And I remember, oh shit, I saw them with her in her boudoir album, not the wedding. I didn't do the wedding. And they're both looking at me like, who is this woman? I was like, oh, I thought you were a friend of mine. I'm sorry, mistaken identity. Grabbed some bananas and just ran out of the grocery store, because I was like,
was it those?
What was I just going to say? Oh, hey, nice pair.
Well, at least you didn't pick up melons, I guess. It could have been melons.
Yeah, imagine. Woo! Was it that couple, though? Was it that couple, Stephanie? That
What?
you did the photograph. Did you say you did the photographs, the boudoir?
No,
couple?
I did not do the photographs. I retouched her boudoir album.
Oh, you retouched
And I designed
them.
it. I designed it and
Okay,
retouched
right.
it. That's how I recognized her. But I didn't do their wedding. I wasn't a second shooter at their wedding.
Right,
So I'm
okay.
recognizing them in the grocery store based on her boudoir album. And I thought for a moment, oh yeah, I also shot their wedding. Hey guys, and I was like, oh no, I didn't. And I wasn't about to expose myself as somebody who had seen her partially naked. So I suppose if it had been him, I would have grabbed the carrots. No, never mind. Cucumbers.
Now you've got people's imaginations running wild, Stephanie.
Come on, we're all adults here.
Anyway, I'll give another one. I suppose this is another one. I was working for the newspapers, and there was this film. I have to say which way you say.
Why don't you just say movie?
Movie. So in case people go, what's a film? It's just the way I say it. So, and half the other Irish people. But anyway, so I did know who one of the guys was. It was James Nesbitt, and there was another guy that he was with, David Wilmot. I think he was done in the Tudors or something. Anyway, so they were doing a movie down in Catherine's Park in Lucan, and I had to go to that. And there wasn't any other kind of photographers allowed in from any other newspapers for some reason. I don't know what the story was there. So myself and the other girl I was working with, so she was the journalist. I was there to take the photographs. So she was doing the interviews. So anyway, we walked in and she says, oh, there they are over there. I says, and she goes, so what do we do? I says, oh, they're stopping. They look like they're, going for a cup of coffee. Now's the perfect time to go over. So we went over and we were chatting away to them, and she got the interview and I took the photographs. And I remember looking at David, and he had a clip in his hair, right? And I says, oh, sure, look, I'll just Photoshop the clip out, which is, fine. So I wouldn't worry about the photographs. So anyway, they were doing this scene. Now, I don't remember if it was this exact time, because I haven't seen the film, but they were saying that there was a part where one of them had to get pushed into the river, and they were saying it was happening next. So I'm there, photographing as they're, going through the scenes or whatever. It's being recorded. And I noticed Dave still has the clip in his hair. So I'm thinking, oh my God, what do I do? What if they push him in and they're after doing that whole scene and he has the clip in his hair, and it was tied back. It wasn't even like it was tidy. It was, you could actually notice the clip, and I was like, oh, what if, and I was like, what do I do? So, it was, the way on a set, it's so quiet, so you could hear a pin drop. I just went, excuse me, And he just goes, oh, and I went, David, I said, he still has the clip in his hair. The clip's still in your hair. You know what I mean? And they're like, oh, thank you. Okay, thanks, take it out there. We'll just start again. And I was like, oh, thank God for that, because I just didn't know what to do. I was like, what if? You know what I mean? So I was kind of thinking, well, at least nobody gave out to me, so which was a good thing. Like, nobody told me off. So they did thank me for it in the end. But yeah, it was. Sorry, I hope you didn't hear that. That's my doorbell going off. I have to put my phone on silent. Sorry about the banging there. Go on now. Anyways, that's another.
That's quite funny, actually. Are you guys? Have you guys had any like sort of encounters? I know you said about the with the tie and everything, but when you meet someone famous, or if you've ever photographed someone famous and say not recognise them, or had like a strange encounter or anything, and you know, because that's it's happened to me a couple of times actually, where because I'm not very good with celebrities and kind of famous people. You know,
neither am I. I have to go. I have to Google everyone. If I was ever sent out for photographs, I had to Google who they were beforehand.
Yeah,
because I'm terrible.
I can't say I've ever. I really don't think I've ever had a photograph a celebrity. I don't think so.
So I was
evidently they made such a. If I did, they made such an impression on me that
lasting impression. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was photographing. So again, this is going back to kind of 2012, I think it was. I was photographing Britain's Got Talent and Dancing on Ice. And of course, I didn't know the ice skaters. In fact, I still can't remember his name, and I really should, because obviously this was the encounter that was really awkward. It's kind of similar to yours, Cathy. And I was backstage and, you know, waiting to kind of go and round the front and then obviously photograph everyone for the show. And I was backstage, obviously, like, hanging around with people. And I just thought they were extras or, you know, like staff who had been setting up the stage or helping the ice skaters and all that kind of thing. You know, famous ice skaters. And I was talking to this guy and I was like, oh, yeah, you know, so... You know, how are you? How have you been getting on? You know, have you had a good week? And, you know, oh, so what are you here for then? You know, are you helping out? He's like, yeah, I guess you could say that. I was like, all right, cool. So what do you do then? He said, yeah, I'm one of the main ice skaters. Like, it's like a famous Canadian ice skater. And I'm like...
I'm glad that I'm not the only one that does something like that. That makes me feel so much better.
Yeah, and I was just, it was embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. But then I thought, well, I mean... It kind of is, you have to go with it, don't you? You own it and you go with it and you go, oh, I'm so sorry. And I think I said something similar to you, Cathy. I was like, oh, I didn't recognise you, you know, because I think he was in like sweatpants and stuff instead of the glitz and glamour of an ice skating costume. So you know, he's like, yeah, no worries.
It's funny. They weren't famous people, but I had something similar happen to me where I was called to do a family session. And when I get there, the woman who had contracted me, she said, oh, we're a blended family. Like, there's a lot of different aspects to this family and stuff, what have you. You know, like maybe it might be friends that are not related by blood, but they're so close they're considered family. Fine. Yeah. So at one point, you know, this is a good lesson. Take time to find out who is who and who goes with who and whatnot. Because at one point they said, oh, yeah, now it's, let's just say, Jimmy and Johnny's turn. And I swear to God, I could swear they were father and son. They looked like father and son. And I said, okay, so is this your dad? He's like, no, it's my boyfriend. I was like, I said, and I just laughed. I said, excuse me while I bend over and stick my foot further in my mouth. And the younger of the couple laughed and he goes, oh, we get that a lot. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess you do.
Oh, Stephanie, there was a wedding that I shot and, you know, the groom was there and he always spoke very highly of his grandmother. And so I'm going along, and this was it was after the ceremony. This is before, like, as everybody was walking into the you know, where they were getting their dinner, and I went up to the groom, and there was this woman standing beside him, and I went, "Oh wow!" I says, "Hi, so good to meet you. You must be the granny." I said, "He speaks so highly about you all the time," and she went, "Actually, I'm his mother." And I was like, oh my God. I says, you just, here I am, like you look very alike. And, you know, it's horrible when you do something like that, isn't it? Like, it's really, and then afterwards, like, you could feel your face burning up with embarrassment, you know.
By the way,
I said, you look really good, you know. And then I just walked inside, you know. So.
I apologize for the dog. barking in the background.
I know.
They stuck past the barrier.
Aw.
It's life. But
Yeah.
speaking of sounds intruding on something, don't you have a story, Sean, about a wedding?
Oh my goodness, yeah, I do. So, so I started out in wedding
I hand that off
photography,
to you.
and I was working for a wedding company, and they basically sent me out straight away to go and do weddings. And sometimes I wouldn't find out who the bride and groom were literally until the day before. So I wouldn't meet them. I wouldn't get to meet them before. I wouldn't do their engagement shoot. It'd literally be, here's the address, go and shoot this couple.
Imagine
and
if it was your
that's
ex.
it. Yeah, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Shoot, sorry.
And that's okay. And yeah, so I turn up and everything's going well, you know, doing the at the bride's house and doing, you know, the pictures of her getting ready and the detail shots and everything else. And it got to the point where I said, oh, do you have the rings I could take a photograph of? And they're like, oh, no, we can't find them. I was like, all right, okay, well, let me know when you have them and I'll take some photos of them. Anyway, sort of half an hour kind of went past, and one of the family members came up to me and just said, oh, do you have the rings? I was like, well, no, that's what I've been asking you for, because I want to do some detail shots, you know, and get those for before we get to the wedding and everything. And she's like, well, the rings aren't here. I'm like, okay, well, never mind. I'll do the detail shots when we get to, you know, the church or reception or wherever, just as long as I can get them for you guys, for your book, for your album. And she was like, and then that started being a little bit kind of more abrupt and a bit rude. They go, no, we don't have the rings. Like, they're gone, they're lost. And then there's like a panic around the house. And then I couldn't leave. So I couldn't leave the house. And then they said, well, we need to search your bag. I'm like, well, I kind of appreciate, obviously, I have nothing to hide. Feel free to search my bag. Like, I have nothing to hide. You can do that. But it felt so horrible that obviously, you know, when you're kind of trusted to do such an important job anyway for a day, you know, for a moment, you know, that's once in a lifetime kind of thing. And then to be asked that and you're like, oh, you know, it's a horrible feeling.
Oh,
but I mean,
can imagine.
You know, so I thought, well, okay, well, obviously I can't say no because, you know, then what I would look guilty.
Yeah.
So yeah, go and have a look through my bag, and obviously they weren't there. Then I think someone else turned around and said, oh, they found the rings in the back pocket of the jeans. It's like, oh, come on, guys.
Well, at least they found them. Yeah, at least they found them. Thank God.
But I mean,
'cause
putting in the rings in the back pocket of jeans. Come on, guys. Honestly.
I mean, of all things that go missing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
At a wedding,
why
you don't
I
want the rings.
always put the rings when I go to shoot them. I put them on my pinky.
Yeah.
Is it because I know that they're there? But you know, I had a wedding where I was photographing it. It was that time where the officiant looked at the groom and he said, "Can I have the rings?" You know, during the ceremony, and the groom looks at the best man, and the best man gets the deer in headlights look. And the groom looks at him and he goes, "Dude, this is no time for a joke." And the best man said, "Dude, I'm not joking. I don't have the rings."
Oh no.
And he couldn't remember where he had left them.
Oh, my
and
God.
to her credit, the bride was so chill. She just laughed and she said, "Well, if something like this was gonna happen to anybody, it would happen to us." And so she saw two of her friends in the audience, and she said, "Anna, Frank, give me your rings. We got to borrow them for a minute." And so she used her friend's rings to complete the ceremony. And then later they found the rings, and the officiant, they exchanged them at the reception.
Oh, good.
But it was just so funny.
At least they
everybody was
found
like,
them, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've had a wedding where a cake was gone missing. I went to photograph the
cake?
cake. Yeah. And what
Let's
happened was...
take a cake.
And the thing is, nobody...
They're
big. It's a huge cake. It's 3 tiers. But anyway, yes, I went in and I was like, oh, I'll just... You know, they were setting up the room and I said, well, I'll get the photograph of the cake. At least I'll get the detail shots out of the way and just the photograph of the cake itself. And so I went in and they're all setting up and I says to one of the guys running around, I says, "Where's the cake?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." He says, "Ask one of the waitresses there." And I went over and I says, "Do you know where the cake is?" And they're like, "No." He says, "Is it not in the kitchen?" So they asked somebody else and it says, "No, it's not in the kitchen." And somebody says, "Well, it shouldn't be in the kitchen because it should be straight into the room and, put on the table." So I says, "Oh, I'll go out to reception and see if I can find the manager and see what the story is." So I went outside and I asked for the manager and I says, "There's no cake. There's no wedding cake. The bride, like I want to take the photograph of the cake, because I was going to get them to come in and, do the the cutting of the cake, and so I can,
Right.
set up the shot and whatever. So he's like, is it not in there? And I said, no, it says it's not. So anyway, they rang around a few places, and they rang, they found out where the cake was from. And so it ended up that it was delivered to a different hotel.
Right.
So it wasn't even that
Oh,
hotel.
no.
Oh,
No.
yeah. So I was like, oh my God. So they're like, oh my God, what can you, I says, I'll just tell the bride and groom, look, I'll get the cake after. The room's a bit messy or whatever. So I went in, I just says, oh, look, we can get the photograph with the cake, later on. We'll just carry on doing group shots and things like that. So I never told them. And then, they eventually, I think it was the manager went off, drove to the other hotel with somebody, got the cake, brought the cake back, put it in the room, and the bride and groom to this day still does not know that cake wasn't there, because I never told
Oh my
them.
gosh.
No, never
They
told
do
them.
now.
I've got a story about something that went missing from a wedding. It was the very first wedding I shot as a primary. And I get to the reception. This is after the big Catholic ceremony. We go to the reception, and I can't find the card, the compact flash card that had like all the stuff up until that moment.
Oh, no.
So I asked my second, I said, run back to the church and see if it's there. He goes, where do you think it might be? I said, like halfway down in one of the aisles. So I go on shooting, right? And somebody said, oh, what happened to your second? I was like, oh, he had to run and get something. He left in the car, right? Nobody noticed. He comes back, he goes, I didn't find it. And I was like, oh, no. Oh, I'm sweating bullets. So I said, okay, you cover. I'm going to run back to the church. And by this time, I don't know if you realize, on Saturdays, Catholic churches have what's called the Vigil Mass. That usually starts about 5 o'clock. So Catholic weddings tend to take place much earlier in the day. They can't have that late afternoon ceremony. Mm. So church is about to start, right? And the priest is standing in the back, about to make his way down. I say, please, Father, just hold off for 1 second. I have to see if I left something in the aisle. And it's the Monsignor, and he looks at me and goes, make it quick. And I was like, okay. And I go to the aisle, and there's this woman sitting there, and a rather, how shall we say, curvy woman, right? Bit stout, shall we say? And I said, ma'am, I think I might have left something in this pew. And she goes, really? I said, would you mind standing up? And she stands up. And there, stuck to her butt, is the card.
Oh, no.
And I just said to her, I said, hold still.
Just as well as it was you and not the guy. Could you imagine? Sorry,
Thank you.
Oh my God. What would you do?
And she didn't even feel, well, I carefully took it off her butt, and she didn't even feel it, because she's like, was it there in the seat? I was like, yeah. It just went running back to the reception.
There's no worse when a card goes, like a card stopped to me. I was in photographing for, it was a big company. I'm not even going to, I could say the name of the company, but it was a big company. And so it was a promotional thing that they were doing. And so they had people running back and forth, and it was just different events that were kind of set up. But anyway, next of all, I looked at my camera, and I had, the E or, and you see that error thing pop up, and I was like, oh, what's wrong with this? So I said nothing, and then I just took the card out, replaced it with a new one, and carried on. But I got them I said, you know what, maybe we go back and just do that other shot again. Just, maybe we just mix you guys up, and just to make sure I got it again. Because I was absolutely, and I was like, oh my God, like I took so many, what if I don't get them back? But when I come home, I did find a software that did retrieve them, and I did get them all back. But like, you just have to be, it's good about having two cameras with you, but you know what I mean? Is switch between them, because you just don't know. Like, sure, if anything ever goes wrong like that, you know what I mean? It happened at a wedding on me. Yeah, I mean, I was photographing a wedding, and it's like I had a lot of mishaps. I'm still surviving. I'm still here. But so there I am. I think it was Barbarastown Castle, I think it was. But anyway, so they have this curtain, and before the bride and groom walk down into this room, they were just about to lift the curtain, and I just got, and next of all, my the card was nearly finished, so I turned around and I says, oh, let me just switch the card around. So I took a card out, put it back in, wasn't working, just the camera just completely stopped, and my other camera was at the top of the aisle, and at the time it was only a spare one, it was a crop sensor. I was like, oh my God, and this place was kind of tight and whatever. but it was at the other end. So I says, and they were ready to run through. So I'm just like, let me go first. Just let me go first. So I came in and down the aisle, and there was a guy sitting there. It was a guest with a 5D Mark II. And I just went, can I grab your camera? Can I borrow your camera? My camera's just have to break it really quick. And he just looked at me, goes, here you go, there you go. And he just passed it to me. And I just turned around, and then I got them. They had started walking because they had the parents
goodness.
walking down. Everyone started walking down the aisle. And I'm like, so I just turned around. I said to the guy, I says, so I'm so sorry. I says, just for being so blunt. Like, and he goes, oh no, I could see the panic in your face. He goes, what happened? And I says, like, the card just when it went in, and then it just nothing would work. And I tried switching cards, and it still wouldn't work. So it wasn't the cards; it was the actual camera broke. It was the way you put the card in. It just wasn't connecting, and I had. So I rang my husband and I says, any chance I have a spare another camera in the house? Can you just fly up with it? You know, lucky it wasn't too far from the house. So he did. So the other guy, I just says to him, listen, thank you so much. And I says, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring the camera home. I'll just take everything I need off it. I'll clear all my images off and bring it back to you. So I did that night and brought it straight back to him, you know.
I mean, thank goodness for a guest with a very expensive
for
camera.
For a 5D Mark II, yeah. Otherwise, it'd have been, I'd have been like running up in the aisle and just
iPhone, quick iPhone.
Oh my God.
So I've got a question for you too. So have you ever been in a situation, photography-wise, where you might have been, you realized, you know what, I probably shouldn't be doing this, and I'm in danger?
Yes. Photographing bears. Yeah, I was photographing wild bears in Alaska, and flew out to...
Polar bears?
No, grizzly bears.
Oh, okay.
And
they're just as bad, but holy moly.
Flew out on this tiny little flight, this little plane into the middle of nowhere, and I mean these giant grizzly bears just kind of walking wild, and probably a group of about 10 of us, and obviously you've got nothing with you. They didn't carry a gun, I don't believe, and things like that. So you've just got these really wild animals, but they have got used to humans kind of being around. I think obviously they're not tame, but they've got used to. Yes, yeah. But yeah, that's probably one of them.
She looks tasty.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I've never had British food before.
Use my camera as a weapon or whatever. But they did run past, and it was close. It was one of those moments that you kind of like, oh, is it going to eat me? And then it runs past, and you got all the adrenaline going, and it's like, yeah, I would do that again.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. We remember the ones in the Smoky, Stephanie. We pulled up on the side of the road. Yeah, because I just turned around, and next of all, there's a mother and 2 cubs behind me. You know, but yeah.
No, but I remember that same night we were doing shots under the Milky Way of my car, and it's pitch black outside, right, and it's freezing. So Cathy goes, okay, what are the settings? And I give her the settings for doing the Milky Way. So the idea is that during the 20 seconds, you run over to the car with your cell phone and you light paint the car. And we got some very nice shots of my car, But she comes back after one of the times out there. She goes, oh, I heard this odd snuffling sound behind me. And I'm thinking, oh, no, it was a bear. I mean, I could just see, I was, because they are bears
says to me,
there.
she says, I tell you what you got, when you're there, just sing, just make it, because if they hear you, they mightn't come over.
Yeah, they won't come. Right,
do you know what I mean? So we're standing there, because you have to wait for the exposure. Yeah. So they're, and I'm having a note in my head, and I'm singing away. And there's people pulling in then, like with their lights off, and, because they were there to photograph it too. I was saying, Stephanie, oh my God, I hope they didn't hear me sing. I didn't know which was worse, that or the bear turning up.
Oh, brilliant.
Well, the worst that has happened to me, and I think I had mentioned it, but I never explained it, was having a gun pulled on me.
Oh, blimey.
Okay, so you know what urbex is, urban exploration. Mm-hmm. Trespassing into places where you really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So there had been, and it's no longer in existence, but nearby where I live now, there was this old warehouse. And myself and another photographer, we snuck in. I took some pictures of what I found in the warehouse. And then later we returned, and we brought along 2 models, and one of the models had her husband, and my son came along. And that was fun because at one point we're photographing them, and I suddenly go, do you guys smell smoke? Well, her husband and my son had decided to start a campfire, which we were like, no, put that out, please, for the love of God, put that out. But a few weeks later, I went back to the site because I wanted to see if we could use it again. And there was this old guy, one of these good old boys sitting there, and he's got two of these big old heavies, flanking him. And he sees me enter towards the back, and he goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, hello, sir."
Where'd you come from?
Giving him a smile. I said, "Are you by chance the owner?" He goes, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "Man, I'll tell you what." He goes, some woman took some pictures here and she put them on the internet, and I'm really pissed over it." And he reaches down and he pulls out a revolver. He goes, "It weren't you, was it?" And I was like, "No, can't imagine. How rude." I said, "No, my dog ran back here. I'm just looking for my dog. You haven't seen a dog, have you?"
I'd be like, what a big gun you have.
So he looked at me. He looked at me and he goes, "I think you should be leaving." And I was like, "I think I should. Yes, I think I'm going to leave now."
Well, and I was just going to say, girls, on that note, I think we're at the end of this episode. So I just want to say, for those of you who haven't joined our Facebook group yet, please head over to facebook.com/groups/Epic Photography Podcast. And if you have any suggestions for upcoming topics that you would like us to cover, please put your suggestions in there. That's it from me, Sian Elizabeth, and thank you, Stephanie and Cathy, and we'll see you again next time.
And thank you to our dear readers.
Yes, to our dear readers. We'll explain that next time.
Yeah.
No, Peter will.
Peter will, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to explain it
Eventually.
next time.
Eventually.
Maybe.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.